Do we have a treat for you? I'm here with Kim Bolduc, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts. Hi, Kim. It's great to see you again.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is already so much fun.
And thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to visit with us and get to know you a little bit. For those of you that aren't as familiar with Kim or Kimberly, which one do you prefer?
Wow, you and I are on a Kimberly Andrew basis, but most
Yes.
Kim, and that's perfectly fine.
You've been a performer, you've been a technician, you've been a director, and you're a designer too, right? So tell me a little bit about your performance experience. When did you get started?
Yeah, so I grew up in a region of the country that I'm very fortunate. I was able to start really young. So my parents actually met in drum corps back in the late 70s, and I was raised up in this stuff. So it's not lost to me that that's rare and special. And I'm really lucky I had the opportunity to start in my first winter guard when I was 8. I started with St. John's of Beverly, and I marched St. John's of Beverly until I was 21. So I took one season off in there, but otherwise I did 12 years with St. John's. I was raised up there, all the while doing other things in color guard, of course. But yeah, I had a really great opportunity to grow up in an independent color guard in New England, which means a lot of things. And one of those things is we had really great feeder programs. So I was able to start in the cadet class and work my way up into the upper echelons, and I was able to start teaching when I was 14. So I was really lucky that I started teaching our cadet guard and our C guard and our B guard when I was a young performer still. And that experience was really invaluable for me to kind of see both sides that early in my performing career. And then, yeah, from there, I ended up moving out to the Midwest. And that's where I met Mr. Andy Toth. I got to march my final winter guard season with Pride of Cincinnati. So yeah, as a performer, I got to do a lot of really fun things, and it all started right here in the Boston area.
So, I mean, gosh, a performer for that long. I mean, you're just a fan. You are color guard from the time you were so small until now.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to ever since you stopped performing.
Sure, yeah. So ever since I stopped performing, I've been very active in the color guard activity. I've never really fully stepped away. So in wrapping up my marching career, I again had already been teaching some of our younger groups. I taught some high school teams in college, and then I, living in the Midwest still, got to teach color guard full time at Carmel High School in Carmel, Indiana, in the early days. Back when we used to beg kids to come to winter guard auditions. So I was there for our last year in Scholastic Open, and then I was there for the first 2 years of having a World Guard at Carmel. I also had the great fortune of being able to start the middle school color guard at Carmel while I was there. So that's something that I'll always have a little place in my heart for the JV team in Carmel. I taught Greenfield Central out in Indiana for a couple of years, and then I moved back home. So I had said I did drum corps, I marched cadets my last 3 years, and then after I aged out, I started teaching Boston Crusaders. I actually worked full time for the Boston Crusaders. So there was a time in my life that the performing arts was everything, all encompassing. It was my full time job. I worked in the office. I got to teach the drum corps for 4 summers in the summertime, and that brought me back to my sort of home roots in Massachusetts. So taught a few groups locally. St. Anne's had reached out to me as soon as I moved home. And I spent a good chunk of my time, the first 6 years, really full time with St. Anne's from 2010 to 2015. Ever since then, I'm pretty sure every season I've been there for at least a rehearsal or two. I go in when I can. I have a pretty demanding job these days. So whenever I have a chance to head down, I'll go in and do some choreography when I'm able. I've also worked with some groups in between. I went down to Alter Ego for a couple of years back in 2017, 2018. So it's really nice to have that world-class teaching experience with the Alter Ego team. And for the last, gosh, I think this is my 10th season now, with Salem High School from Salem, New Hampshire, known locally as Salem Blue. But I've been there, I'm pretty sure, again, this is my 10th season there. And again, a lot of things in between, St. Brendan's, a lot of other teams I've had a chance to work with. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of color guard, but I also have a pretty full life outside of that. So I sort of go in ebbs and flows with what my participation looks like depending on the year.
Now, when you went back to the East Coast, you were on the design teams for those teams, right? St. Anne's and then also with Salem Blue, right? You've been really integral in the design. Tell me a little bit how you're able to juggle that along with your full-time career.
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think so. So as you mentioned, I've been a tech, I've been the movement person. I've directed, I haven't directed WGI guards. I will say that it's mostly been local teams or middle school teams. I have so much respect for the directors out there, especially now more than ever in WGI, the work that goes into being a director. Mwah, thank you for everything you all do. But yeah, I definitely in the last handful of years, I'm a little bit heavier on the design side. It's something that I enjoy. It's a creative outlet. It's something that brings me just great joy in general. And for me, part of I think why design has become a little bit better of a fit for me is, as you said, how do I find that balance with my personal life and my color guard life? So I mentioned I work a pretty demanding job. I do have a full-time job that I work anywhere from about 50 to 60 hours a week. I'm on call all the time. So I also, as you had said, I have a personal life too. So I'm getting married in a couple of months. So I've had to find a way, and I should rewind a bit. I mentioned I started when I was 8. So my entire life, color guard is not just something I did in my free time. It's something we talked about at the dinner table. It's something that, when I went to March Cadets, I was so lucky that friends and family were able to sponsor me because they all marched. So I was really lucky to grow up in that, but I think there's sort of it's a double-edged sword because it was the priority for so much of my life. I sacrificed my grades, and if you're out there and doing that, stop. Please invest in your grades too. But I sacrificed a lot of relationships, and color guard was just my everything for so long. And no judgment if that's where people are at now. That's a beautiful thing, and I enjoyed those times in my life. But in the last 10 years or so, my priorities have shifted a bit, where my career has really become a priority. My personal life has become a priority. So that's been a challenge, is how do you find that happy medium? And I think getting back to, I really enjoy being more involved on a design side because I can do that from home. I can do that from afar. I don't have to always be in the gym to find my way to contribute. I can be looking at flags online. I can be doing a lot of things from home, cutting music. So there's a lot I can do outside of that. And I think something I'm proud of, honestly, because of my background, I'm really proud that I have found a way to make color guard my hobby and not my entire life. Um, but here's the thing. So as much as I'm prioritizing those other things in life, I have always said, as long as I still have a love for this activity, as long as I'm still inspired when I stand in front of kids in a gym, I will always continue to be a participant in some way. I love WGI. I'm so grateful to have this chance to talk with you. I love education. I love the activity. And I've always said, if I still have a motivation to give back, and if I still have a desire to give what I can back to a community that's given me so much, I'm never going to be fully done. It's impossible. It is in my bones and in my blood. So I'm proud that I found a way to make color guard my hobby, not just for me, but the groups that I teach are very respectful of. I've learned to set parameters. I've learned what is too much for me and maybe what's just enough. It's great because I'm pretty effective, I think, I hope, when I'm in a gym with the kids because I'm not there all the time. So I think I get a little bit of something different out of them. But I really just enjoy being at a place in my life where I can participate when and how I would like in a way that still benefits the teams that I work with. And that was years in the making. That was really hard for me to figure out. And I think that we're really in a sweet spot in my current relationship with color guard in this activity. But no, I'll never be done.
And we're so fortunate to have you in that design room because your point of view is so unique. I got the chance to see Salem and this year, and I heard your voice, and I welled up immediately. It was just so special, and I know you, and hearing your voice. Did you write the script for their program this year too? And then that's your voice, and it just you're hearing your point of view. Can you talk to us a little bit about your design process with these groups that you teach?
Absolutely. Ooh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
So yes, so Salem this year, and the spoiler is out. Yes, that's my voice. Uh, and it's funny too because we almost re-recorded it, and I wanted to maybe bring someone else in to re-record, but the inflection and everything we had already been writing to at that point, and that's an integral part of the choreography and the design process as well the kids have been working with this piece of music. But yeah, there's been a few different years that I'm really lucky. So again, my parents met in all of this, but I'm extra lucky that my dad has been a music educator for my whole life. So he has his degree in music composition from Berkeley. So that's pretty fortunate for me that I have that right down the road. He has a master's degree in music education. He was a DCI judge at one point. I mean, he's been very involved in our activity. So I partner with my dad a lot. He has helped with a lot of music cuts over the years. You've heard my voice on a few different tracks of teams that I've worked with. And for me, a big reason as to why is you go online and you're listening to music and you're trying to find the exact right sentiment or the exact right message. And that might not always exist. So I've been really lucky that I've had the means to be able to really collaborate with the staff and create our own narrative. So that's been something that I really enjoy doing. I love it. I'll record things as I'm driving in the car. I'll jot notes down while I'm just kind of in my travels. But yeah, back to your original question. So how do we go about designing? And I think it depends on so many variables. And I think that's important to clarify the different components of what drives the design or essentially, really what makes you pick a show to start with in early seasons. So I think an important thing obviously is, does it fit the kids? Does it fit the individuals that are going to be performing it? You might want to do a fun jazzy show from the 20s with tap dancing, but if you don't know how to tap and your kids don't know how, well, that's going to be a little tough. So I think it's important that it matches the students that you're going to have in front of you. And it doesn't have to match perfectly, because I think it's important to also note that sometimes doing something a little different is really important in the training of your kids. If you do the same exact style every year at a certain point, do you need to open up those neural pathways to do something a little bit different for their growth and development? So there's an important clarification there. But does it fit the staff? Does it fit your style? I'm really lucky right now. I work with a great staff. We collaborate together so beautifully. I have so much fun at practice. And we riff with each other. It's like jamming with a band, and we all just have our own part that we play. But I think sometimes when we're listening to music early season, we'll start to go a little bit off the path. And we have to remind ourselves, as a team, we're all different in our own ways, but we also have a sweet spot as a team. And there's a range that the sweet spot includes, but I think it's important that you find something that fits within just kind of the what inspires your team, right? If no one's inspired, then you're not going to get much out of the design and the writing and the choreography. And if you're not going to get much out of that, what are you going to get out of your students? So really important, it fits both of those. I think the other thing is just general logistics, right? Some teams have endless budgets, maybe. Others don't have any budget at all. We're at a point now with the team I work with primarily that we can do a digital print floor every other year. So we have to think about that when we're designing. Is this a digital year or a not digital year? And I realize we're lucky that we have that. There's teams that are using the same floor with 47 layers of paint until it falls apart. So can they logistically pull that together? Other logistics, like, do you have support? I've had shows that I've wanted to do for years that are just a plethora of props. Who's going to build them? What are they going to cost? Do you have enough kids to set them up and break them down? And think about, every time we're moving a prop, you take a member away from what else is going on the floor. And there's so many other logistics that really come into play that you really have to think through. And I think sometimes you have to be really patient. So I mentioned what fits well on the kids. And I think sometimes it's easy to get into, I found this piece of music that I love. This is going to be fabulous. But is it right for the team you have now? Or is it right for your program in its current state with its current goals? So I think that's important for a number of reasons. I think back, we actually went independent for a while with Salem, and then we had to go back to a scholastic team. So we were in a rebuild. We ended up, I think, 7 or 8 kids at the beginning of the season. we needed a show that was going to recruit new members. So we were very intentional about picking a show that we could have fierce costumes and phony ponies and something that was about empowerment, that had a little bit of a pop track in the background, because we needed the younger siblings of these members to want to join next year. We needed kids in other activities to be able to see it and say, wait a minute, I want to be in the color guard. That looks really cool. Whereas the next year, when we got some members, we were ready to be a little bit more mature. I think about a few years back, we were designing for a group that was fairly young, and we knew we were maybe on the 2 or 3 year plan. We had a couple of sophomores and juniors we were really keeping our eye on. And our goal had been, let's go and try and make semifinals this year. That's a realistic goal for us. And we chose a program that was a little bit more fun, because for us, it was about retaining those members. So we wanted them to have a show that was going to make them want to come back and do it again. That was really important in our soundtrack design. And then the following year, we knew we were graduating 4 of those kids. Now they're all seniors. So this was the time we were ready to give them a more mature vehicle. We wanted them to have an amazing senior year. And our goal last year, we set out to make finals. And we designed the program accordingly, because we felt that they were now ready for it. And we invested a lot. We flew writers in more often. We invested in costuming and custom designs. So I think it depends on where you're at in your current journey. And every program is at a different point. And the same exact guard next year to last year to 2 years ago, we may need different things for whatever success maybe looks like for us. I think back to, you had mentioned St. Anne's, and some folks might remember in 2015, we did a little show about hands, and that ended up being an A-class gold medalist. A lot of people don't realize we sat on that show for 2 years. So we actually came up with a concept the year prior. I had pitched that at a meeting that we collaborated at, and we were similar to with Salem a couple of years ago. We were at a point with St. Anne's, we were going to bring them back to Dayton for the first time in many, many years, the first time for this sort of generation of kid. So we had talked through a show about hands. And it was something that I was so excited about. The whole staff was really interested in it. It sounded different. We had a feeling this could be lightning in a bottle, but these kids weren't ready for it. And we also needed to get them back into the swing of what WGI was. What does the UD Arena even look like? So we had to get them back into that mode. So we selected a different show. Not only did we feel the kids weren't ready, but we weren't ready for that show yet. We had a lot of ideas, but they were just ideas at that point. So I think an important thing is to be patient. And sometimes it's okay to sit on things, and it's okay. I have a million shows sitting on a back burner somewhere that I don't know if I'm ever going to do. But it's just, it's right place, right time, right kids, right staff, right budget, right amount of parent support. There's a lot of things that really are, I think, integral to making sure that the program you choose is the best vehicle for that version of that color guard in that year. So I've had a lot of fun with having that chance to sit on things and noodle on things a little longer, and hopefully the right team comes along that's ready for it. And maybe the right team doesn't come along. And I always have those songs and those themes in the back of my head. And at some point, it'll be the right time maybe. And if not, I'll be able to watch those versions of the shows in my head for years to come. And sometimes it just, again, lightning in a bottle happens. And sometimes it's just the right fit for the right team for whatever different goal you might have.
Well, that is such a valuable lesson that we could all learn from. I mean, it really seems like you go into the season with knowing what the ingredients are, really. And you're like, okay, can these ingredients make the thing that we want to make? And if not, then let's make the thing that the ingredients can make.
Yeah.
And that's going to be your best dish in the end.
Yeah.
That's so smart. I think so many people can take that as such a valuable lesson.
I think something else that I've really learned throughout the years is as you said, you go in with the ingredients, but I think it's important to not be so married to your ingredients and not have your
Hmm.
ego intertwined into it. And I think of times where maybe I had a song that I just couldn't let it go. I'm telling you, it's going to be fabulous. But you also have to listen to your gut. You have to listen to your fellow staff members. You have to watch how the kids are reacting and responding to the program. because sometimes you may come with a basket of ingredients that you think is going to cook up something wonderful, and you might realize that it's just not coming together, right? I'll keep using the analogy. You're taking
Yeah.
little bites and nibbles, and you're thinking, ooh, needs a little
Yeah,
more.
you might not realize that someone might be allergic to it, or someone just it might not be their taste. Yeah, exactly. Just the awareness that you seem to have with these programs is incredible. I love it. Yeah.
I think you have to be open-minded, and you have to know to look for the roadblocks, and you have to have the courage to face them head on and address them. So I think of a lot of examples, and maybe one of my greatest lessons learned over the years when it comes from a place of design. And I'm lucky that I've taught teams in every one of the 6 classes of WGI. So there's different nuance depending on the class you're teaching in. But when I really look at I'd say probably I've had the most experience with independent and scholastic A class, has been really where I've done the most of my more designing and being a part of the design team. And I think, again, a huge lesson learned for me, if I could share anything with people that are getting into designing or interested in designing, or maybe have been doing it a while and just looking for information. Again, you have to be adaptable. I think back, I hate to use it as an example again, but that St. Anne's Hand show, not only did we sit on that show for 2 years before we actually felt we were ready for it, a lot of people don't realize we started with completely different music that year. So we were, this is a fun fact. I don't know that anyone knows this. We had started with Spiegel and Spiegel. A lot of guards have done it since, and a few had done it prior. We worked on that show the entire fall, and we had been staging it, and it just wasn't coming together how we wanted it to. And every practice, it felt like we were back to rewriting the beginning and let's start again. And what if this member comes here? And well, what if we pulled focus there? And we had been really working on this labor of love at this point. And I will never ever forget, it was the week of, I think, Christmas break. The kids were all on school vacation, and some emails went around. I want to say December 26th or something really painful when I think back. And the staff had gone back and forth, and we finally came to a place of the show's not working. And that's a hard conversation to have. So again, a lot of people probably don't realize we changed our music completely. The week of December 26th, 27th, and we had our first show in I think like 2 or 3 weeks. We had our first preview performance. So we went back to the drawing board and we said, it's just not working. It feels like a square peg in a round hole, and how do we fix this? And so Brian Murphy was the brains behind the staging of that show and so much of the design in that show. He had sent us a new piece of music on the holiday break and said, call me crazy, but what about this? And we essentially started over. We kept a lot of the staging and the integrity of what we had been doing, but Andy, it flowed. As soon as we changed the music, we went to rehearsal and we were just getting choreography in, and we were moving on, and now we were in the second chunk and the third chunk, and all of a sudden we're getting a flag feature, and it just fit us better. It fit the kids better. We enjoyed it more. It was no longer stressful. We were no longer going home and saying we didn't get enough done tonight, we're losing time. It opened up the floodgates of creativity. That was such a lesson learned for me. And now here's the thing, you have to be careful, because we knew in changing the music that late in the game, we were asking a lot of our members. We were going to have a very small amount of time before we had to present this in front of an audience. And if I'm being honest, the beginning portion of that competitive season was pretty rough performance-wise, that the members had just learned brand new work. And a lot of the pieces stayed the same. You know, there was always going to be a look mom, no hands feature. There was always going to be pieces that stayed, but we had to make a very intentional decision that we can continue to fight the show, or we can listen to what the show and what the kids are telling us. And from there, that season went on a completely different track. So I've never forgot that lesson. I think that's maybe something important for designers out there. If you find yourself fighting with it, something might not be right. It's like life, right? If you have a gut feeling something's not right, it's probably not right. We actually did that this year at Salem. So we had a completely different show concept that we started with this season. And because I have those lessons learned from way too long ago now that I think about it, we had a very similar moment this season where we had our designers coming out to do staging and choreography, I think a week and a half later. And we had gone back and forth. And I think all of us independently knew at moments that we just weren't jiving with it. We weren't inspired by it. We loved a piece of music we found, but it was too short. So we had to pair it with something else, and we couldn't find the right second song. So we kept cutting it, finding new things. We put narration on it. We kept adjusting it, but we were struggling on the costuming. We were struggling on what the flag slopes are going to look like. What does the floor look like? But we loved this piece of music. And it took, again, I think sometimes it takes the courage as a staff for someone to open up that question. And Jeff, that does our staging, had called me. He said, we need to talk. So, oh boy. He said, have you talked to the director yet about how she feels about the show and where we're at? And I said, well, yeah, a little bit. He said, I think you should call her. So she and I had a conversation, and I said, I don't even want to ask, but I'm going to. Do you think we need to scrap it? And I could feel the relief in her voice. And as
Mm.
soon as she said, yeah, I think we need to scrap it, I felt relieved. And we had about a week and a half. We found new music. We came up with a concept overnight, and that's what we're rolling with right now. But we had a similar experience this year where it just wasn't coming together. And at a certain point, we had to let go of, we loved that second piece of music. That second piece of music wasn't meant for us this year. And I
Mm.
think that's something we discovered through honest and open communication with each other. And for that reason, I think we landed on something that's just a better fit. And again, similar to all those years ago, the show has just come together. So as folks are in the design process, listen to your gut, and have the courage to say, if something's not working, let's talk about it. Because the flip side, I've worked with teams and on shows in the past where I had that gut feeling, but I didn't feel it was my place to speak up. So I kind of hung on to that. And I'd say my piece in little ways, but I'll never forget the feeling of my kids finishing their season, not as successful as they would have liked to have been. And I kicked myself because I thought, man, why didn't I say something when I knew things weren't really working out? Or why didn't I speak up and really um, protect the program more? I think you have to have the courage, and you have to have open communication. You can't just make statements like that if you don't have a team that's built on trust and just respect for one another. I think we respect each other so much so that if someone has an opinion in a room, good ideas can come from anywhere. And you
Mm.
have to listen to those little voices that say, hey, wait a minute, guys. And I think that's, again, something that's important to be able to have those conversations in the first place is to really work toward a team that can collaborate and create together and have such a pride and passion for what you put on the floor. And I think if you all come from that place, Andy, to your point of making sure that it's really member and performer driven, I think that's going to help you to make those decisions in the best way possible. We're at a point in the season where, if students are still struggling on things, is it the right thing? We've already started to make some adjustments and tweaks to parts of the show from 100% a perspective of performer confidence. Because
Well, and
we,
you had mentioned you'd mentioned trust in so many levels. You mentioned it with trusting your gut and trusting the staff and the community and the performers, and especially since all of the programs that you've been putting together are so performer centric and so specific to them. I mean, Kim, I can't thank you enough for all of this inspiration that you've given us tonight and your words of wisdom. I mean, speak volumes. Your point of view and the point of view of the teams that you teach, they're so beloved and everyone just adores them. They're charming and authentic. And I can't thank you enough for taking some time today. And we can't wait to see what you bring throughout the next couple of years.
thank you so much for having me, and everybody out there, keep at it. Love on those members, and every time you step into the gym, my advice would just be give back how you can, share your passion and your love, and the rest sort of comes out in the wash, right? Make sure that first and foremost, the members are enjoying what they're doing, and continue to do everything you can to build them up, and make sure every time they step on the floor, they're proud and confident in what they're doing. That's first and foremost. There's a lot of design decisions you may make in the process, but the number one design decision we should all be making is to design a show that fits our members well and to set them up to feel like $1,000,000 when they step out on that floor. So best wishes to everybody out there. Happy new season, and I can't wait to see what everybody does.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thanks for having me.